As she sat watching the world go by, something caught her eye. It wasn't so much its color or shape, but the way it was moving. She squinted to see if she could better understand what it was and where it was going, but it didn't help. As she continued to stare into the distance, she didn't understand why this uneasiness was building inside her body. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling a little off, but you couldn't quite put your finger on why? Like something wasn't sitting right, but you brushed it off, thinking maybe you were overreacting? The truth is, you're probably not. Disrespect doesn't always show up in obvious ways. It's not always someone yelling at you or openly criticizing you. Sometimes it's subtle. It's hidden in the quiet moments, the side comments, the small actions that chip away at your confidence. Today we're going to expose those sneaky ways people might be disrespecting you, ways that could be flying under your radar, and once you see them, you'll never unsee them. Let's get into it. Backhanded compliments are one of the most subtle and sneaky forms of disrespect. They often sound like praise on the surface, but beneath the words lies an undercurrent of criticism or condescension. The reason backhanded compliments are so dangerous is because they can be hard to recognize in the moment. You hear the words and they seem positive, maybe even flattering, but something feels off. There's a sting to the compliment, an undertone that makes you question yourself. And if you're not paying close attention, you might just accept the comment, smile politely, and move on, unknowingly absorbing the insult. For example, someone might say, "Wow, you're really confident for someone your size." At first glance, it seems like they're complimenting your confidence, but the hidden message is about your size, as if it's surprising that you could be confident because of it. Or they might say, "That presentation was actually really good. I didn't expect that from you." It sounds like praise, but the word actually and the admission of low expectations reveal the disrespect underneath. Backhanded compliments are tricky because they rely on ambiguity. The person giving the comment can always fall back on, "I was just giving you a compliment, you're being too sensitive." And that's what makes them so sneaky. They can leave you doubting yourself, wondering if you're just overthinking it. That kind of confusion is a form of emotional manipulation. It keeps you second-guessing your instincts and undermines your self-confidence. It's also worth considering why someone might resort to backhanded compliments in the first place. Often, it's a reflection of their own insecurities. People who feel threatened by your confidence, success, or appearance might use these subtle jabs as a way to bring you down a notch. They may feel powerless or competitive, and instead of addressing their feelings directly, they express them through veiled insults. Recognizing this doesn't excuse their behavior, but it can help you detach emotionally from it. You can understand that their words are about their struggle, not your worth. Over time, developing this kind of emotional resilience is powerful. It means that other people's words lose their grip on you. You stop second-guessing yourself. You stop shrinking to fit into their comfort zones. And that's where real confidence is built, not in how perfectly you handle every situation, but in how little you let negativity shape your self-perception. Finally, it's important to create boundaries. If you notice a pattern of backhanded compliments from a particular person, consider how much access you want them to have to your life. Sometimes distancing yourself is the healthiest option. You don't have to tolerate subtle disrespect just because it's not loud or obvious. You deserve relationships, whether personal or professional, where your worth is acknowledged without condition. Recognizing and confronting backhanded compliments is about more than just defending yourself in the moment. It's about claiming your space, refusing to shrink, and deciding that you won't accept disrespect in any form, no matter how subtle. Because once you see these sneaky forms of disrespect for what they are, you empower yourself to rise above them, and that's where true strength lies. Interruptions are one of the most common but overlooked forms of disrespect. On the surface, they might seem harmless, just someone eager to share their thoughts or add to the conversation. But when interruptions happen repeatedly, especially in certain patterns, they reveal something deeper. It's not just about words crossing over each other, it's about whose voice is being prioritized and whose voice is being dismissed. Interruptions can be a subtle way of saying, "What I have to say is more important than what you're saying." And over time, that message can erode confidence and self-worth. When someone cuts you off mid-sentence, they're not just breaking the flow of conversation, they're breaking the respect that comes with allowing someone to express themselves fully. Think about it. When you're speaking and someone interrupts, what happens in that moment? You're forced to stop, pause, and either fight to reclaim your space in the conversation or back down and let it go. That moment of hesitation is more than just a gap in words. It's a disruption in your ability to be heard and understood. What makes consistent interruptions so damaging is that they send a message about value. If someone repeatedly cuts you off, it can feel like they don't value your thoughts, opinions, or insights. It can feel like they believe their voice deserves more space, more attention, more respect. And when this happens over and over, especially in workplaces, meetings, or social gatherings, it can lead you to question the importance of your own voice. You might start to pull back, speak less, or second guess whether your ideas are worth sharing. And that's the real danger. It's not just about being silenced in a single moment. It's about the long-term impact on your confidence and how you see yourself. Sometimes people interrupt because they're excited or passionate about the topic. They might not even realize they're doing it. But there's a difference between an occasional enthusiastic interruption and a consistent pattern where someone habitually cuts you off, dismisses your points, or dominates the conversation. When interruptions become a habit, it reflects a lack of awareness, or worse, a lack of respect. Then there are the strategic interrupters, the people who use interruptions as a way to control conversations and steer them in their favor. These are the people who will jump in just as you're making an important point, redirect the focus, or challenge you mid-thought. The goal isn't always to engage with what you're saying, but to take control of the narrative, to put themselves in the position of authority. This kind of interruption isn't about conversation, it's about power. It's about establishing dominance and ensuring that their voice is the one that commands the room. Think about a meeting scenario. You're sharing an idea, building up to your key point, and someone cuts in with, "Yeah, but," and suddenly the focus shifts. You're left either trying to defend your point mid-thought or sitting back as the conversation moves on without you. In that moment, the interruption isn't just about cutting off your words. It's about cutting off your influence. It's about ensuring that your perspective doesn't have the chance to land fully or make the impact it deserves. What makes interruptions especially frustrating is how society often conditions us to respond to them. Many people, especially those who are naturally more reserved, have been taught to be polite, to avoid confrontation, and to let it go when someone interrupts. But constantly letting it go has a cost. It trains you to accept being talked over. It conditions you to shrink your voice, to believe that maybe your input isn't as valuable, or that maybe it's better not to speak up at all. And that's where the real damage happens, when you start to silence yourself, not because you want to, but because you've been conditioned to believe that your voice doesn't carry the same weight. So how do you handle it when someone keeps interrupting you? First, it's important to recognize it for what it is. Pay attention to patterns. Is it the same person interrupting you? Does it happen more when you're speaking about certain topics or expressing certain opinions? Awareness is the first step because it helps you see that this isn't just about random conversation dynamics, it's about a power dynamic that needs to be addressed. One effective way to respond is to calmly but firmly reclaim the conversation. If someone interrupts, you can pause, look at them, and say, "I'd like to finish my thought." It's simple, direct, and respectful, but it sets a boundary. You're signaling that your voice matters and that you're not going to be brushed aside. Another approach is to use nonverbal cues. If you're interrupted, simply hold up your hands slightly, maintain eye contact, and continue speaking. This subtle gesture can be surprisingly powerful. It communicates confidence without aggression. You're not asking for permission to speak, you're asserting that you will be heard. In group settings, allies can also play an important role. If you notice someone else being interrupted, you can step in and say, "I think," was still finishing their point. This not only supports the person being interrupted, but also sends a message to the group about the importance of respect and inclusion in the conversation. But perhaps the most important strategy is to resist the internal urge to shrink. Don't let interruptions train you into silence. Your voice is valuable. Your thoughts are important. If someone is cutting you off, it's not a reflection of the worth of your ideas, it's a reflection of their lack of respect. And that distinction matters. Finally, it's worth thinking about your boundaries. If someone in your life constantly interrupts you, whether it's a colleague, friend, or even a family member, it's okay to have a conversation about it. You don't need to frame it as an attack. You can simply say, I've noticed that I get interrupted a lot, and it makes me feel like my thoughts aren't valued. I'd appreciate it if we could be more mindful about that. It's a respectful but clear way to set a boundary. Consistent interruptions are more than just annoying. They're a way of diminishing someone's presence and power in a conversation. But once you recognize this pattern and take steps to address it, you reclaim your space, you protect your voice, and in doing that, you not only stand up for yourself, but also for anyone else who's ever been quietly pushed aside, because your voice matters, and it deserves to be heard fully, clearly, and without interruption. Dismissive body language is one of the most subtle but powerful ways people show disrespect. Unlike words, which can be clarified or explained, body language often communicates feelings and attitudes that people might not even be fully aware of. It's nonverbal, but it speaks loudly. The way someone uses their body, gestures, or facial expressions can either create a sense of connection and respect or deliver a clear message of disinterest, annoyance, or even contempt. The challenge is that dismissive body language can be so subtle that it's easy to overlook, or worse, easy to internalize as your fault. Think about the last time you were speaking to someone and they kept glancing at their phone. Or when you were sharing an idea and they crossed their arms, leaned back, and looked away. Maybe they sighed quietly, glanced around the room, or gave you a quick, tight smile that didn't reach their eyes. These are all examples of dismissive body language. The person might not say outright that they're uninterested or that they don't value what you're saying, but their body speaks for them. And that kind of unspoken rejection can hit harder than words. The danger with dismissive body language is how it slowly chips away at your confidence. When you're consistently met with eye rolls, sighs, crossed arms, or distant gazes, it creates an environment where you start to question yourself. You might wonder, am I boring them? Did I say something wrong? Should I stop talking? Over time, this kind of feedback, even when it's silent, can make you pull back. You start speaking less, sharing less, and shrinking your presence. Not because you want to, but because you've been conditioned to believe that your voice doesn't matter. One of the most common forms of dismissive body language is avoiding eye contact. When you're speaking to someone and they refuse to meet your gaze, it sends a message. It says, I'm not fully present with you. I'm not really interested. Of course, there are moments when people are distracted or deep in thought, but if someone consistently avoids eye contact while you're speaking, it creates a feeling of distance. It feels like you're talking to a wall, like your words are floating into empty space with no one to catch them. And that's a form of dismissal. Then there are gestures like crossing arms, leaning away, or turning the body slightly away from you. These movements signal a closed-off attitude. They suggest discomfort, resistance, or even rejection. When someone is truly engaged in a conversation, they tend to lean in slightly, mirror your gestures, and keep their body open. But when they lean away, look around the room, or shift their posture to face away from you, it's a sign that they're disconnecting. It's a nonverbal way of saying, I don't really want to be here. I'm not invested in this conversation. Another subtle but dismissive gesture is the tight, forced smile. It's the kind of smile that lacks warmth or genuine engagement. It's used to quickly dismiss a conversation, to give the appearance of politeness while actually signaling indifference. You'll recognize it because it doesn't reach the eyes. It's mechanical, automatic, and it creates a cold distance instead of connection. And then there's the classic sigh. A small, quiet sigh might seem harmless, but in conversation, it can be loaded. A sigh can say, I'm bored, I'm annoyed, or I wish you'd hurry up. It's a small gesture with a big impact. It can shut down a conversation faster than words because it immediately makes the other person feel like a burden, like their presence is an inconvenience. The real challenge with dismissive body language is that it's so easy for the other person to deny. If you confront someone about dismissive behavior, they might say, I wasn't doing anything, or you're reading too much into it. And that's what makes this form of disrespect so tricky to address. It leaves you questioning your own perceptions, wondering if you're imagining things or being too sensitive. That's why recognizing the patterns is so important. If dismissive body language is happening consistently, it's not in your head, it's a real signal that needs to be acknowledged. So, what can you do when you're faced with dismissive body language? The first step is not to internalize it. Just because someone is showing disinterest or discomfort doesn't mean it's your fault. It doesn't mean what you're saying isn't valuable. Often, dismissive behavior says more about the person displaying it than it does about you. They might be uncomfortable with the topic, dealing with their own insecurities, or simply lacking the emotional intelligence to be fully present. If it's a one-off situation, it might be best to let it go. Sometimes people are distracted, stressed, or simply not in the right headspace to engage deeply. But if it's a repeated pattern, especially with someone you interact with regularly, it might be worth addressing. One way to do this is to mirror their behavior back in a subtle way. If they avoid eye contact, you can pause and wait until they meet your gaze. If they lean away, try leaning in slightly and maintaining open body language. Sometimes people become more aware of their own behavior when they sense the disconnect. Another option is to call it out in a calm, non-confrontational way. You could say something like, "I'm getting the feeling that this isn't a good time to talk. Should we continue later?" Or, "I'm sensing that I don't have your full attention. Is everything okay?" This doesn't accuse them, but simply brings awareness to the dynamic. It gives them an opportunity to reflect on their behavior and adjust if they choose to. But here's the key. Your worth isn't defined by someone else's body language. You don't need constant validation from others to know that your voice matters. If someone chooses to dismiss you, that's their loss. You can choose to stand firm, to speak with confidence, and to stay grounded in your value. Sometimes the best response to subtle disrespect is to be unapologetically present, to hold your space, finish your thoughts, and continue to engage as if your presence is undeniable. Because it is. In the end, dismissive body language is about control. It's a subtle way for someone to dominate a conversation, create distance, or diminish your presence. But you have power too. The power to notice, to respond, and most importantly, to decide that someone else's discomfort or disinterest will not shrink you. You deserve to be seen, heard, and respected. And no crossed arms, averted eyes, or forced smiles can take that away. Backhanded compliments are one of the most deceptive forms of disrespect. On the surface, they sound like praise, but beneath the surface, they carry a sting of criticism or condescension. These comments are designed to seem flattering, but they're actually meant to undermine you, make you doubt yourself, or subtly put you down. The danger is that they're wrapped in politeness, making them harder to confront. You might walk away from the conversation feeling off but unsure why. That's the sneaky power of backhanded compliments. They confuse, disarm, and chip away at confidence without being openly hostile. There are also situations where backhanded compliments come from people who genuinely don't realize the impact of their words. They think they're being funny or honest, but their comments reveal unconscious biases or judgments. For instance, saying, "You're surprisingly articulate for someone your age," carries an assumption that younger people aren't usually articulate. Even if they didn't mean harm, the comment still stings because it reveals an underlying belief that is both unfair and disrespectful. So, how do you handle backhanded compliments when they happen? The first step is recognizing them for what they are. Trust your instincts. If a compliment feels off, analyze it. Ask yourself, does this praise come with a hidden criticism? Does it feel like I'm being subtly put down? Once you start recognizing these comments, you can decide how to respond. Sometimes the best approach is to call it out directly, but calmly. You can say something like, "That's an interesting compliment. What did you mean by that?" This puts the other person in a position where they have to clarify their statement. It forces them to confront the implication of their words. If they were trying to be disrespectful, they'll likely backtrack or try to brush it off. If they didn't realize how it came across, it gives them a chance to reflect and apologize. Another approach is to respond with confidence and humor. If someone says, "You look good for your age," you could smile and say, "Thanks, I look good for any age." This deflects the negativity while reinforcing your self-assurance. It sends a message that you're not going to let their subtle dig affect you. Humor can be a powerful tool for disarming backhanded compliments because it keeps the tone light but also asserts your strength. In some situations, it's best not to engage at all. If the person is someone who thrives on putting others down, engaging might just fuel their behavior. Sometimes the most powerful response is silence. A look that says, "I see what you're doing and I'm not impressed." Silence can be uncomfortable for the person giving the backhanded compliment, and it sends a clear message that you won't tolerate disrespect, even if it's disguised as flattery. The key is to stay grounded in your worth. Backhanded compliments lose their power when you refuse to let them shape how you see yourself. If someone tries to diminish your achievements, remind yourself of how hard you work to earn them. If they make subtle digs about your appearance, remember that your value isn't defined by anyone's opinion. You don't need to accept false praise or let someone's insecurity influence your confidence. It's also helpful to set boundaries. If someone repeatedly gives backhanded compliments, it's okay to address it privately. You could say, "I've noticed that your compliments sometimes feel a bit critical. If you have feedback for me, I'd prefer you to be direct, but I'd appreciate it if we could keep our conversations respectful." This is a straightforward way to communicate that you won't accept subtle disrespect, and it encourages healthier communication moving forward. The most important thing to remember is that you deserve genuine, respectful compliments. You deserve to be celebrated without conditions, without hidden criticism, and without subtle digs. If someone can't offer that, it says more about them than it does about you. By recognizing backhanded compliments and choosing how to respond, you take back your power, you protect your self-esteem, and you show the world that your worth isn't up for debate, not even in the form of a cleverly disguised insult. Disrespect doesn't always show up in loud, obvious ways. Sometimes it's subtle. It hides in dismissive glances, backhanded compliments, silent gestures, or moments when people cross boundaries without realizing or caring. And when it's subtle, it's even more dangerous because it creeps in quietly, making you question yourself, shrink your presence, or doubt your worth. But here's the truth. You deserve to be respected. You deserve to be heard, valued, and acknowledged without having to decode mixed messages or tolerate quiet disrespect. The first step is awareness, recognizing the signs when they happen. The second is confidence, trusting your instincts and standing firm in your worth. And the third is action, deciding how you'll respond, whether that means setting boundaries, calling it out, or choosing to disengage. Because disrespect only grows when it goes unchecked, but it shrinks when met with strength. You don't have to accept subtle digs or stay silent in the face of dismissiveness. You have the power to stand tall, to protect your energy, and to demand the respect you deserve. And the more you honor yourself, the more you teach others how to treat you. So stay sharp, stay strong, and remember, your worth isn't up for debate.